Welcome to the Champions of Change podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Sorrell, and today we're going to be talking about unlikely friendships. And today I have with me my very special unlikely friend, the Reverend Dr. Steve Gill. Steve, I'd like to welcome you to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, and I'm glad to have a chance to have a real conversation with somebody who's different than myself.
That is true. We're very different. I just wanted to kind of give the listeners an idea as to our backgrounds and what it was like for us growing up, just to highlight some of the differences. And we're going to talk about how some of these differences helped us in our perspective of things and our view of things. And yet we were able to have the iron sharpens iron thing going on and be able to really grow personally for both of us because of it.
Yeah, I would say that we came to complement each other very well. Because we had differences, we were much stronger together than we would have been individually.
Absolutely. So where did you grow up at? Did you grow up here in Ohio?
I grew up in a suburb of Cincinnati called Anderson Township. It's a upper middle class kind of place. Mostly people in that area are white collar workers. I grew up in a family of which my parents were married for like 68 years, and they had 6 children, and I'm the oldest son, so I have a sister who's older than me, and then I have 4 younger brothers, so there were 6 of us born within 7 years, so
Wow.
Everybody thought we were Catholic, but we weren't.
So, I grew up in a single parent household, never known my real father, had an abusive stepfather. And I know you're not going to want to hear this, but there was a time when I kind of looked at you as a father figure, although I know that we're not very, that far apart in age, but I never had a person that treated me the way that you did, as far as just kind of taking me under your wing, because I didn't have a lot of experience in the nonprofit world, and you really helped me a lot in that. But the fact that I never had a father in my life to teach me some of the things that men need to know, and I know that's important. And give me just one of the main things that your father instilled in you at a young age.
And my father was a mechanical engineer, aeronautical engineer with General Electric, designed jet engines. And my father was somebody who was highly committed to his own education. My mom had gotten married when he was like 20 years old, and it took him 10 years to finish his degree at the University of Cincinnati, while he was also working at GE at that time. And so he loved education, and he really believed that, and he was the first person ever in his whole lineage to ever get a college degree. So he was really high on being an educated person, and on children being educated well, and had expectations of us to do well. Was not home all the time because General Electric was pretty demanding on him. He traveled out of the country a good portion of the time, spent a lot of time in France and back. My mom would then be kind of in charge of the 6. Obviously, he was home enough to father a bunch of kids along the way. He was somebody that also we were expected to go to church, and I can remember him every Sunday morning, waking everybody up in the household to get ready, and there was no excuses for not going to church.
Okay, so I know that your family, and I've heard you say this many times, that your family really valued education. You and all your brothers and sisters, and then your children as well. And I have a high school diploma, and I can remember when we used to go to some meetings with other nonprofits or city officials or whatever, and without fail, somebody would say, "So Jeff, where'd you go to school at?" And I would say, Xenia High School. And they'd go, "Oh no, where'd you go to college?" And then I'd have to sheepishly look down and tell them, well, I didn't go to college. And it was always a kind of a source of shame for me. I mean, I always felt bad when they asked me that. And I can remember you said something to me later on. You said, you've done more with less than about anybody that I know. And that really kind of helped change my perspective about that.
Yeah, and while you weren't in school, you were learning a lot of other things too. And when we were working together, often was aware. I was highly aware that you were gifted in working with people, and that you had an understanding about getting things done, and that there were lots of things that you knew how to do, which you didn't learn in an academic environment, but you had learned it through life and other things that you were doing. So it was not for me a issue for the fact that you didn't have a lot of formal education. On the other hand, there were things about formal education that were good.
Sure.
And had stretched me. I was somebody who was called to ministry when I was a kid, and I already knew that I was headed to do graduate work after I did my undergraduate work. So when I was in school, I studied things like logic and philosophy and sociology, where we talked about different groups of people. And I think the fact that I was a sociology major made me more interested in the work that we would end up doing together, because you had also worked as a sociologist, meaning that you were in the arena a good portion of the time, and I could learn and see how you handled yourself and handled people from being in that area.
So I grew up in church as well. I mean, I was expected to go to church until I was old enough on my own to where I could say, no, I'm not going. But I grew up in church, and I grew up Assemblies of God, and I know you grew up United Methodists, which are very, very different I mean, we all love Jesus, but we're very different in a lot of our beliefs in that. I mean, the people that I went to church with were, tongue talking, run around the church, speaking in tongues type stuff. And I know that that's very different, because you invited me to come and be at some United Methodist services. And so I knew and understood that, but I'm amazed at how comfortable that I feel really in any church setting, whether it be a Catholic church, a Presbyterian church, a Methodist, Assemblies, Baptist. I mean, I felt comfortable in all of them. They were different, but I felt comfortable in them.
Yeah, I think that was part of the also things that bound us together, was although we'd worship in a different kind of context, it wasn't really a belief system that was different. It was just really the religious practices.
Sure.
I often think of our religious practices as being like our workout. Like some people, right now I'm swimming some, but I'm not lifting very much. But the way that we worship is one style, but what we actually believe is a different thing. And actually, theologically, the roots of Church of God and Methodists are very, very tied together. So there are things about that, very grace-driven.
Sure.
That's a big, strong part of both of our backgrounds. And then it influences how we deal with people.
Well, I know that during the times that we were working together, primarily at the Life Enrichment Center in St. Paul United Methodist Church, and doing the work that we were doing, or the kind of work we were doing. And the thing that always impressed me was that we had different strengths that we really pulled off of each other. You had areas of strength where I was weaker, and I had some areas of strength where maybe you were a little bit weaker. But together, we were kind of a force of nature. We really were. We were able to accomplish a lot and pull in a lot of different types of organizations and people. And I think that the impact that we had together on East Dayton between those two entities was significant.
Yeah, I can remember us. We were working cotton, kind of on the cutting edge a good portion of the time. And that was something that both of us were interested in. We were trying to get things done. We were going to help launch a bicycle program for the city. We were going to work on things that had to do with the heroin epidemic that was going on. And you and I could go into a situation, and I think because we were often with other people who had either an education or a particular skill set already, I think we often were able to manage that well, because the two of us brought different experiences together that allowed us to show that we had competencies as a team. And I think that's how we worked.
Absolutely. And I know that politically we're different. I mean, I believe you tend to lean a little more liberal, and I tend to be a little more conservative, but we both have learned that we love people and we care about people. And the one thing that we always had in common was we may not exactly believe the same things, but we cared about the same things.
Right.
And that was huge. And we were talking before we started the podcast about how we'd be up in the workout room and we'd have some big time arguments. We used to work out at like 6 a.m, 3 days a week at the Life Enrichment Center up in the fitness center. And we had some pretty intense conversations. I mean, shouting and veins popping and bulging and at the end of it, I love you, brother. I love you too. And we'd hug each other and see you on Wednesday. And that's how that would go.
Yeah. So I have 4 younger brothers, and all of my other brothers also have seminary degrees and have been church people. And we don't agree. We didn't all go to the same seminary. We don't all agree on anything. And I argue with my brothers like you and I argue. And I was really always grateful to have somebody, because I was used to having somebody who could stick up for what they believed and tell me why they believe what they believe. And I felt like that was there was something dynamic about the ability to exchange with great energy and commitment to different parts of the world in which we were dealing in. And yet it wasn't hurtful to be in that kind of engagement. It was like just working out really hard, wrestling with somebody who, you really respect. That's, kind of the person that you don't understand or that you're trying to win against. And yet that was, for me, it was kind of like having one of my brothers, particularly my next brother, Greg. He and I always will argue in the same manner. But the idea that the willingness to say that I love you and care about you and value you, even though we often are coming from a different place.
Sure. Well, I know that you helped me grow a lot. I mean, I was fairly young, and when I say that, I don't mean chronologically. I don't mean necessarily my times, with the Lord, but I was young in the position that I was in, starting a nonprofit from scratch, and have never run a nonprofit before in my entire life. I mean, let's face it, I was a box counter from the Super Value warehouse, and I had just done manual labor and hard work a lot of my life. And so now I'm thrust into a position of, I'm the executive director of a nonprofit, which I know nothing about. And having you come in and to be able to help me and show me, because you'd been in that world, that nonprofit world, for quite some time. And for me to be able to lean on you and talk to you and have you come up alongside and help me was invaluable to me. I mean, helped me to grow in ways that I can't even explain.
You had the ability to get things done in a way that most academic people don't. Academic people often have good ideas and share them dramatically or steal them from somebody else. I'm not sure where that always comes from, but they have these great ideas, but they're not very good at getting anything done. And what you were always good with when we'd work together and come up with kind of a vision for where we could go or who we needed to talk to in order to bring onto the team in order to accomplish the next thing, you were really good at actually executing and bringing things to completion, that there'd be ability to get something done. And that is not largely true in the academic arena. I've been a university chaplain at Ohio Northern University, and I sat in university conversations with all the faculty, and everybody talks a lot, but they don't get much done. And I've been in lots of other environments where there are people who have good ideas, but they never know how to get them done. And you were way better at getting things done than anybody else I'd ever worked with.
Well, I think the thing that was the strongest between us was that we were always willing to accept other possibilities. We were always willing to view things through a different lens and through a different perspective. And there was times when I would sit and watch how you conducted yourself in a particular situation, and I would think to myself, that worked a lot better than the way that I would have handled that. That seemed to work a whole lot better. You helped me with conflict resolution and being able to be a kinder, gentler person. I mean, you really did. And I looked up to you in a lot of ways because you were like a mentor to me in that respect. And so how do you think that you grew in the time that we spent together as far as just your personal growth and your professional growth?
I had already learned before you and I became close friends. I had moved out kind of more the academic environment to doing more things with people on the streets. And I had gone to work for the YMCA. They had a big trauma in the historic African-American Y. I was dropped into the position of being an executive director with no background in running a Y. But I had run churches. I'd been a senior pastor of a large church kind of thing. And I needed to be able to cross some of the lines, particularly socioeconomic lines. I'd grown up in a pretty homogeneous, white, very much more Republican, kind of academic, well-educated kind of group of people. And I needed to be able to deal with people, particularly poor people, who I had not had an experience as a child. I'm grateful for that. But I needed to see how people were making decisions and why they were making decisions and what caused them to make decisions. And we did a lot of training around things like bridges out of poverty. We did conversations frequently about how do we deal with people in different levels of income, and how do we help them not necessarily all become middle-class people, but how do we help them be the people that they really are going to be at their best. And I needed somebody who knew the language and understood some of the systems, which your background actually provided you with a lot of understanding there. What my background did was it caused me to not be a yeller. That when we get into things where you want to yell at somebody for their bad behavior or for breaking the rules or doing all kinds of things that were more destructive, that there were different ways to handle that. And it wasn't just me. There were other people on our team that were carrying, that were good at dealing with other things, particularly the issues of handling people.
I think one of the things that really helped me was because of my background, how I grew up, come out of really government cheese and food stamps, and living in not so nice places, and moving a lot and being around. You know, I grew up for a little while in Parkside Homes, which at the time was primarily African-American community, Black community. And so I was very comfortable in that situation. I had grown up in a way that a little more street smart, and I'd heard every con and every lie and every excuse that you could possibly come up with, because I'd come up with some of them myself. So I understood that behavior and understood that climate when I entered into it. And so it was where other people could get scammed very easily. I wasn't quite so easy to be scammed. And you know, I ask you questions until you trip yourself up with your own lies. And then, you know, we go on from there. But I just wanted to quickly explain to people what the hammer versus the velvet glove means. I mean, that's kind of been a little thing between us for quite some time. And I just want you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think part of it is that a lot of more academic kind of things is that you're supposed to get control of yourself, so you shouldn't be demonstrating a tremendous amount of emotion when you're making decisions or when you're trying to deal with people.
And that wasn't me at all, right? Emotional.
Well, let me just say, I worked on a psychiatric unit when I was in undergrad in a hospital, and I learned that if people were out of control, getting out of control with them was not the way to go. And so you should sit down and slow down,
talk quietly,
and talk more quietly, and you could control behavior by the way you behave, rather than enter the way that somebody else is behaving.
Sure.
And I think that experience when I was an undergraduate working in Lexington, Kentucky, that was for me a way to figure out, how do I manage people when the moment is all out of control? And we were in an environment where being out of control was kind of a standard among many of the people that were there.
It was the norm.
It was the norm. And so how do you handle that? And how do you not react and just throw everybody out all the time, which was, you finally think, like, I need to be able to see what we can do to actually help this other person learn how to be better able to manage themselves. The other thing that I think was also different than this was that, I did not grow up, I'm not a drug user. I didn't grow up as an alcoholic. I didn't have an alcoholic person in my family. I had really strong Christian formation from my grandfather, who I spent a lot of time with. And I think I learned a lot about the value of treating people kindly, and that's really how we are as Christian brothers, and we're supposed to act.
Sure.
And I think that kind of guided more how we should relate to each other. It doesn't mean that I couldn't be out of control. There are times when I have been, but mostly our behavior, where we were really learning from each other, was at what point are we really done, and how do we manage that moment? But more importantly, in the day-to-day activity where we're going to have somebody in who's either lying or stealing or disrupting somebody else or threatening somebody else, all those kinds of things that happened on a regular basis, the ability to manage that was really about learning how to talk to people, and yet to draw a clear line that says this is unacceptable behavior.
Right.
And that you're in charge. You were the executive director, you were in charge, and what you said would be what would take place. But generally, if somebody wasn't kicked out for life, they were just released for a period of time.
Yeah. A lot of times we just had to say, come back tomorrow.
Yes.
When you can conduct yourself a little better, and we'll start over from there. And I know that people who are struggling, people that are broken, and we're all broken in certain areas of our life, but people that are struggling and broken, a lot of times act out, and they have never learned the skills to control their emotions and control their attitudes. And it's something that we all can learn from on a daily basis as to listen to how we talk to people and how we treat people. And I know that I was very different, 10, 12 years in at the Life Enrichment Center than I was the first 2 or 3 years, just because I dealt with people in the street, but dealing with people in the street is a lot different than dealing with people when you're responsible for an organization. I mean, someone gets in your face on the street, you settle it and it's done. But when you're having to conduct yourself in a manner of leadership, and because you have people that are watching you, and you have not only your staff and your volunteers that are watching you, but the other people that are there are watching how you treat people. And I think it's very important that we conduct ourselves in a manner that we should as Christ followers. And,
that's right.
And, I want to be Jesus to people. I really do. And there's people that make that very hard. It's hard to be Jesus to them, but it can be done. And I can remember sitting down in the cafeteria when we would sit down there and eat with some of the clients, and just listen to how you talk to them and encourage them. And I thought, there's something to this. It really is.
I mentioned sitting with people and having breakfast with them. as a corporate kind of person, you're often going to have somebody says, well, I'll meet you for breakfast. And you go to Bob Evans or somewhere like that,
Right.
you know? And I had finally figured out that when somebody said to me, you know, let's have breakfast together, I would say, well, let's go to the Life Enrichment Center and have breakfast, because I wanted people to have the experience of being in an environment that's totally different than what they might normally have done, but that they came to have an experience of being in the midst of other people who are eating breakfast together, that this could be something that was a shared experience. And Life Enrichment Center provided that opportunity for me to bring people over, particularly people who would not ever have thought to come to a place like the Life Enrichment Center for breakfast. And yet it was one of those places where you got to actually meet people in a real way. You could sit and have a conversation with somebody across the table that whose life wasn't anything like what mine was, but that I could learn from them about what was going on too. One of the other things that really struck me about our relationship, remember when we were trying to figure out a slogan we were doing a new marketing campaign.
That's right.
And we were being...
there was a team of us up in a person that did marketing's office. And there was probably, 8, 10 of us up there.
Right. And we had met at least twice previously, and we were not coming up with the answer. We were looking for a slogan or something that kind of was going to set the Life Enrichment Center apart. And I remember the day that somebody asked you why you do what you do, and you said,
because everyone has value.
And the moment you said that, like everybody wrote that down on their piece
ding,
of
ding,
paper.
Ding, ding, ding.
That was the moment that really described why we were doing what we were doing, because we understood the value of other people. And that was, for me, really the essence of the experience, which was life-changing then, and equipping. I felt like if that was true inside the Life Enrichment Center, it would be true in other places as well.
So, reflecting back on the fact that we have very different education in our lives, we grew up very differently as far as our households were concerned, different church affiliations, different political beliefs. How long have we been friends now? Have you calculated that? When did you first come to the Life Enrichment Center?
I first came when probably in 2002 or 2003.
Okay.
You're still over in Irwin.
So at least 22 years, bare minimum.
Yes.
And during this whole time, I mean, we went through a lot of changes as far as, you changing your position from the Y to St. Paul's and some of the other stuff. And once we moved into the bigger building, it was always a challenge to raise funds to pay for a 57,000 square foot building and to be able to do the things we really want to do. And no one could believe that we even got that building in the first place. And that's a whole nother story. But to be friends as long as we have been with such differences, I find to be amazing. As far as unlikely friendships go, there would probably, if you was to say, okay, well, who do you think you're going to be friends with for the next 20 years? A person of my ilk would not have popped up to you probably, and a person of your ilk would not have popped up to me. And it's amazing to me that we have been as good of friends as we have been for all these years.
Yeah, I really believe that that's kind of a sign of the depth of who we have become, because both of us have grown dramatically spiritually by being together.
Sure.
And by working in communities that were difficult. I mean, we're frequently in situations that were, frequently I was the board chair during this period of time when there was no money and we weren't even paying you on a regular basis. And just the stress of all those things that we went through together, but that we were willing to stay together, and we were keeping things open, and we were really serving the community still in a major way. I think that was a really powerful time for me to recognize that the problem in the world today is that people are functioning with about half of what they need to know, and they think they know more than they do about somebody else. And I think what happened for me through all that time was the introduction of each other to other friends or to other people that we wouldn't have known, because if we'd stayed in our own little niche, if I'd stayed the pastor of a local church and been mostly tied into visiting my members and serving my members and teaching my members, that would not have grown me in the same way that being back out in the world with you, but always feeling like we were Christians together, that it wasn't like being alone. It was like a brother in Christ, that we were working together.
Yeah, we had a lot of innovative things that we implemented together in the city of Dayton, and we accomplished things that most other organizations never thought we would ever pull off, and grew into quite a large organization. And then when you switched over to being the pastor of St. Paul's, and the transformation that you made there from what it was to what it became was amazing.
Yeah, so we knew that we were working in the middle of the heroin epidemic in particular, but really when fentanyl hit Dayton, which was we were serving the zip codes that actually were the highest number of opiate deaths per capita than anywhere else in the nation. And at this moment, Life Enrichment Center, we were partnering with public health, and public health nurses were coming, and they were exchanging clean needles for dirty needles. And then part of that was to keep needles out of all the other places that they were going.
Reduction.
But also harm reduction in terms of HIV or
Hep C.
Right. So we were in an environment where we were seeing hundreds of people come through the building that were there primarily because they were addicted, and trying to build some relationships, and how that then continued to grow us into being supportive of sober houses in the area, or working. We had AmeriCorps workers I had with me that had been recovery in as a drug addict, and was able to be really effective inviting people into considering entering treatment, or when they were coming out of treatment, we knew people who were running sober houses that were doing a really good job. And I think we played a kind of stabilizing place in that period of time.
And eventually we opened up our own recovery cafe.
That's right.
And so I look back very fondly on the time that I would say our heyday with St. Paul's and the Life Enrichment Center, and the things that we were able to do, and the people we met, and the people that we helped, and the people's lives that we saw, changed and transformed. And it gives you a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction to know that you had a hand, you played a part in the transformation of literally thousands of lives. And that's significant. And the fact that you got two brothers that are so different, and yet we're in unity and loved one another and modeled that for other people to see, I think was amazing. And to have a friendship like we've had, an unlikely friendship like we have, has been, it's something that I cherish. I cherish our friendship. I really do.
I would really encourage anybody who is listening maybe to consider the fact that maybe one of the most important things you can do for your own personal growth and for the growth of community is to find some people who are different than yourself that you would be willing to spend some time with and get to really know. And I think that has been a wonderful pathway. I certainly believe that I've got stretched way more by hanging out with you, Jeff. and I understand that it went both ways, that we were both stretching each other, but we were giving each other the benefit of the knowledge and the skill set of the other, as well as challenging what's going on. And I think that people not only recognize that, not only do we recognize that, but the people around us recognize that. And we became that way with other people. I think the training that we had together actually invites champions of change and other people to also begin to say, how do we step out some more?
Right. Well, you know what? I thank you for coming and just having this conversation with me. And For those that are listening, you can reach us at www.ohiochampionsofchange.org. And you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram and some of those other platforms. And thank you for coming and listening to us and being with us. And we'll see you the next time.